Wow, some of my best poems have come from the deepest heartbreak, right? And having to release this idea that if I truly release the heartbreak, that I'll still be able to make great art. And that's been a journey in and of itself, and realizing, wow, there's a part of me calling in deep, deep sadness because of the idea that it leads to great art. And I think a lot of artists, and I think a lot of people in general, actually subscribe to that idea of the tortured artist.
I learned something that was really impactful for me, which is that your capacity to love others is limited only by your capacity to love yourself. And that's what inspired this piece of poetry, which I call, "You Are Who You've Been Looking For." You are who you've been looking for. So stop looking for more unless you're looking in a mirror, because it's about time for you to see clearly that you are who you've been looking for. And that empty feeling you got, that hole in your chest, you only got that feeling because you think you're not blessed with everything you need. You see, we live in a consumerist society, which means they need you to buy stuff. And the easiest way to sell it is to tell you you're not enough. Buy this car, you'll get girls. Buy this bra, you'll get guys. And we're seeing it so much that we start believing these lies, but the truth is, the makeup they're selling to make you feel prettier is the same makeup you buy to stop feeling shittier about this lie they keep telling you that you are not enough. And what about the movies we watch, all the shows on TV? The more I watch, the more I see I need you to complete me. And yes, love is the answer, love is the key, but if you can't love yourself, how could you ever love me? And loving yourself, what does that even mean? Like massages and selfies and that sort of thing? Because the more I think about it, the more it feels weird. I've always been taught that self-love was something to be feared. I've been taught that arrogance is bad and vanity, it's not good. And even my bracelets are telling me to act how Jesus would. So what should I do? How should I act? I'm supposed to love myself, but how do I even do that? Well, I got a trick that I picked up from a friend who noticed that I was quick to defend her when she would say something negative about herself. She would say, "I'm so dumb," and I'd say, "You're so brilliant." She'd say, "I'm so weak," and I'd say, "You're so resilient." And when she said, "I feel ugly," and I said, "You look beautiful," she asked me why I was so dutifully filling up her cup constantly and yet treating my own cup so irresponsibly. Because when I looked in the mirror, my voice was quite clear. You're ugly, you're too thin, your hairline's receding, you got a pimple on your chin. And that was when she gave me a piece of advice that changed my life. She gave me a hug, and she said, "Treat yourself like someone you loved." Treat yourself like someone you loved. Now, I had been standing, but I needed to be sitting because I couldn't believe that I had been letting myself keep forgetting that I was who I'd been looking for. And deep in my core, I knew it was time to stop looking for more until I could look through all my fear and look into a mirror and see clearly that the man looking back at me was the only one who can make me happy, and I am already enough. And I am not any more special or unique than you. That is why I'm here to speak to you. You are already enough. And when you start to see that, you will start to be that. Your world will get brighter, your load will get lighter, and you can see that with life, you can be a lover, not a fighter. And that life, you deserve it. Because you are worth it. And there is no point in letting yourself keep forgetting, because no matter what you say or do, you are perfect. And so today, I hope I leave you with a direction correction away from the flaws you see in your reflection. They aren't flaws to me, they are simply protection against all the doubts you have of your perfection. So start today. Take a good, long look in the mirror and say, "I am who I've been looking for."
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Don't let him rain on your spark. Keep it close to your heart. All of the pressure's gonna drive you crazy. Close your eyes to the madness. In the morning, it's all gonna vanish. Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you. Not every light is gonna guide you.
What's up, family? My name is Adam Roa. I'm an artist, poet, coach, lots of different things. And in today's interview with Ruben, I had an opportunity to speak about poetry, speak about art, speak about depression, and even speak about Ruben's dating life. So you're going to enjoy this one a lot.
So Adam, thank you for coming into the studio and joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for treating me here, Ruben. To get tequila.
A little reposado for a combo.
Yeah, perfect.
Listen to the vibe. So you've been traveling the world. You know, we happened to get you to sink in, and it just happened to work out. But you were just in Peru. Talk to me about how was that trip?
It was incredible. I lead a group program called One Infinity. And I co-lead with a friend of mine, Gerard Adams, who you should have on this podcast. Actually, he's an incredible human. And we brought our group down there to sit in some ayahuasca ceremonies. And the big difference about this versus anything I've ever done, because I've sat probably about 50 ayahuasca ceremonies over the last decade. Wow. And then, but I've never had a chance to make the medicine. So we actually went out into the jungle with the shamans, cut the ayahuasca vine itself, picked the chacruna leaves, hammered the ayahuasca vine down, put it into the pot, added the leaves, and then it was brewed. And that was the medicine we sat with that evening. And we would sit with that same batch of medicine for 3 days in a row. And so to be able to experience it in that way was so profound and so impactful.
Did that part of the journey add to the intention, to the experience? Was it different than the 49 before that?
Yeah, it was interesting because the combination of making the medicine, I felt like the medicine knew me before I ever drank her. That if that makes sense. There was, we'd known each other. We grew up together in a way, right? That experience. And then combined with other elements like we rented out the entire place just for our group. So everyone in ceremony already knew each other going into it. All of that, plus how fresh it was. We literally made it in the morning and drank it that evening. I think the combination of all of that led to some of the strongest, like the strongest medicine I've ever experienced. And I think there's all those factors that play into that.
What a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's really special. Have you sat ayahuasca?
I haven't. It's on my list.
Is it?
I just haven't had the opportunity. Probably haven't really sought it out too quickly, but I want to do it. It's definitely something I want to do. And some people tell you the opportunity will present itself when it's time, or maybe it's just putting the intention there and actually going and doing it. I've
had so many requests from people since getting back. And because I went off the social media grid for a week and then I started posting about the trip. I've had so many people reach out to me, including someone who just said, yo, where do I put my deposit? Where's the next one? So I'm thinking about potentially organizing another trip this year, not for a whole group program, but like a small curated group to go back down. So
put me on that list.
I will let you know.
So Peru only though for this, or do you do anything locally or here?
Well, I definitely have connections to sit locally, and there is something really special about sitting in the we were on the Amazon River. Underneath where we were sitting was the actual river flowing beneath us. It wasn't even dry ground because of the rainy season. So there's something special about doing it, and you can get it done in like 7-8 days. You can make that happen. It's worth it. I think it's really special. And I've sat ceremonies in like Hollywood mansions and warehouses in North Hollywood and retreat centers in Costa Rica. I've done a lot of different variables, and they all play a role. And I think they're all special in their own right. And to be able to go down and have an experience that's that authentic there's something really powerful.
Yeah, basically on the motherland, right?
Absolutely. And with people and shamans and a lineage that are not in the typical Western world day to day, and really carry, they sat for the first time when they were 11 years old, and their father was a shaman, and it was passed down in lineage like that. That sort of thing is very special versus a lot of some of these more westernized circles where the facilitators have, they sat ayahuasca a few years ago and they just felt called that it was time for them to be a shaman of their own right and whatever. And they haven't really done a study or a real apprenticeship in that way. And that's something that that's been on my mind a lot recently. I'm listening to a book called Mastery. And right now the chapter, as I was driving up here, I was listening to it, was talking a lot about apprenticeship and kind of how that's been a lost art.
Yeah. We talk about apprenticeship. Let's talk about in creatives, right? Where do you start seeing nowadays, where are the blacksmiths and the carpenters and all these folks that have people apprenticing, learning, or mentorship? Because now let's say it's IKEA furniture, or it's the quick fix. We want it now. We want it cleaner. We want it quicker, or not learning it. But I also think people are starting to go back to crafts a little bit and craftsmanship.
I feel like we are in a renaissance. We're in a renaissance of so many types of artistic expression. And if you just look at even my genre of expression that primarily is spoken word poetry, and I'm able to most of my income doesn't come from that, but I do earn a pretty good income from when I'm speaking and performing or going on tour or whatever. And so to be in a time where you can do that as a poet, it's kind of crazy. And speaks to a environment where there's got to be some sort of artistic renaissance. And I think that's really special. And the idea of an apprenticeship being you had to do 7 years. It was generally 7 years of apprenticeship. And during that time, when they added it all up, you would spend about 10,000 hours on the craft. And that's where that came from, this idea of 10,000 hours to really develop mastery. And it's interesting because now I feel the apprenticeship that this generation grows up with is like YouTube. You go to YouTube and you can learn anything.
Yeah.
And I'll take masterclass online or listen to podcasts. And so in many ways, we've crowdsourced our mastery. We're now learning from a million different sources all at the same time. Do you think that's good?
I think it's good. I also think it's bad.
Yeah.
And the main reason why we think it's bad is there's a thing like, let's talk about personal development, right? You read a book, you're like, oh my God, this was amazing. I've got these new tools and tips and tricks to be more self-aware and take responsibility and find my own self-worth. But the practice of it isn't really reinforced. It's like, here's the pill, but how do you practice it? How do you master that? And then the next book comes out. Oh, now I'm on this book and now I have a whole new trick to battle that same conversation. So we have the tools and the knowledge and the experience. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to go seek it and say, hey, can I dabble in this? And does it interest me enough to actually go seek out an apprenticeship, go find a master, go through a deeper curriculum that really forces you in there to do the reps and do the work, right? There's a great book. There's a great YouTube video. There's a great Instagram account. But what's next? What's after that?
And for me, that is the process of integration.
Yeah.
Right. Integrating what we experience and whether or not people know how to do that. Because integration is, people get confused by the idea of thinking that awareness equals change. But awareness is not change. You become aware, oh, that's why I have intimacy issues, because my mom and dad never actually said I love you. And I never saw romantic engagement between my parents. So I associate love with acts of service, but not actual physical affection. And like you start to have that awareness, but just because you're aware of it doesn't mean anything's changed. Nothing's actually changed until you start making some new choices. And the process of making new choices in the face of old familiar energetics and circumstances is the process of integrating who you want to be into your day-to-day life. And over time, that process of consistently making those choices becomes embodiment. And now you embody this new way of being through making those choices consistently in the process of integration. And I don't think enough people understand that process. And I don't think enough people therefore value that process. And so when they have this moment of awareness, which feels really good, and then they go back to the process of integration, which sometimes sucks. I mean, I'm in it literally right now after just coming back from Peru, and it sucks right now for me. And they go, well, I'm doing something wrong. So let me go back to the last thing that felt good, which is the awareness piece. And so it's like, let me go to another retreat. Let me hire another shaman. Let me do another healing ceremony or whatever it is. And that's a perpetual loop that people get caught in.
Yes, it's a broken record.
Yeah. And you're ultimately going to wind up in the same song, the same loop, because you didn't integrate new choices. So ultimately you're just going to gain more awareness of the same thing over and over again.
And then the practice of integrating it, doing the reps, the mental reps every single day. And at the end of the day, the problem will always be there. It's not going to go away, but you can shift out of it quicker, or you could be more aware of it sooner and catch yourself. Oh, am I slipping back into this pattern? Oh, what was the tool I just learned? How do I apply that? Oh, let me shift back over here. Let me shift back over here. Because trust me, I lose my mind all the time. It's like living through love is not easy. That's what I say. It's a practice. You know, I get mad. I want to give people the bird and yell at them and get angry. But I'm like, that's not being a good human. That's not practicing empathy and compassion and kindness. So it's like, hold on. Let me take a moment. I'm fragmented right now, right? Let me see what's happening. And then what was the tool that I just learned, or how can I apply it?
Yeah, I say that to some of my clients, which is, don't think that you're trying to avoid those things happening. What's actually the game of personal development is we see the length of the time it takes from when it happens to when you catch it happening to you making a different choice. Like that process. Wow, I went 28 years and never noticed that this is how I respond when I'm feel unsafe. Great. It took you 28 years. Now it only takes you a week. It takes you a week to notice that, wow, last Saturday, that thing that happened, it's because of this. It takes you a week. And then once you realize it, it takes you several months to really start to move through it. Awesome. But if you do that for, I'm 37 now, do that for 10 years, and all of a sudden I catch it in the moment. I go, whoa, I'm feeling really unsafe. And this is the part of me that wants to go into fight or flight. And so the thing that I'm about to say is probably not the thing that I want to say, like to move in a direction that I'd like to see. It's my fight or flight that's wanting me to react that way. And so I catch it, and I've shortened the length of time of these different processes. And when you look at Olympic athletes, right, the difference between first place and last place in a 100-meter sprint is fractions of a second. And the same thing is true, I think, in personal development. It's not that we're ever free of the very human aspects of ourselves, but as we become more conscious and more aware, the nuance becomes what we notice more and more. It's the fractions of a second. I just shaved 5 hours off of the time it takes for me to get over this. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. Because some of my stories, like when I was a financial advisor, I'm successful. I'm born in LA. Like I was single. I don't have any baggage. Why am I having the conversation that I'm depressed and I'm unworthy and I'm not good enough? Like what's happening here? What are the triggers in this? And it doesn't mean I'll never have that feeling again. Doesn't mean that I'll never not feel depressed again. But again, doing the work, catching it quicker. Oh, I'm going down that path. And what is making me feel that way? Where am I either not feeling safe? Where am I operating out of fear and scarcity? And how can I look at that differently and really start analyzing? Oh, wait, I'm just feeling this. This isn't real.
When did you really have your deepest battles with depression?
In the middle of it. So it was probably year 4 and 5 of me as a financial advisor. That's how I relate to my life now in segments.
So how long ago was that from now?
2012, 2013, 2014.
Okay. Got it. Right at that 2012, 2013 shift. That was my spiritual awakening happened January 2013. So right in that shift. And so that was the deepest depression was about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Got it. And do you feel like you hit a point where it turned the corner and it hasn't come back? Or do you feel like it's something you still dance with?
No, I still dance with it because there's days that I catch myself. I'll come into the studio and I'm just like, I don't want to work. I don't feel inspired. I don't want to be creative. Oh, we have to do this again. And I just see myself going down that and I just want to sit there and kind of just stare out. And then I have to snap out of it. I'm like, wait, I have this beautiful life. It's an amazing life. And I don't know exactly what triggers it. I think it just comes on because it's not something not happening or it's not something did happen. It's kind of an overwhelming cloud. Mm-hmm. And a big step in that was actually acknowledging like, oh, that was depression. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that it was depression. Like being depressed or anything around mental health is like a bad thing. Having
depression diagnosed for me was a huge game changer because up until that point, I'd spent, mental health issues run in my family. And so I'd always associated myself as just like being a very strong, like my mental willpower. It's like, you can't fuck with me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so that for me was just, okay, I refuse to have a diagnosis of something like depression for all of my adolescence. And I saw therapists. I went through a huge bout with insomnia. Like there's a lot that looking back on it was like, wow, you were really depressed. And I didn't know that. And in large part because even I had a repressed memory of sexual abuse that I've shared openly now that I didn't remember until I was 30 years old. Mm. And that happened when I was 5. So for 25 years, I'm symptomatically showing signs of depression and all of these PTSD without any conscious awareness of it. And then when I really faced off with it, I went through about a year and a half where it came on very, very strong. And that was my first time to Peru. It was part of the healing process of that. I was so desperate. And what I realized when I finally accepted I actually am depressed, was I could now Google how to heal depression or what to do when you're depressed. Previous to that, the thoughts in my head are like, why am I sad all the time? Or why can't I break out of my funk? And it was a lot more tangible for me to approach the healing process when I had this thing that was depression that I could now quantify and look at and begin to work through. Mm-hmm.
So there's a benefit in the diagnosis or the acceptance of it, right? Because I remember I would do so many things to avoid it. Uh-huh. Like I didn't use coping mechanisms like drugs or partying or any of that, but the gym was a big tool. It's like, I'm just gonna go to the gym and lose my mind as far as I wouldn't think when I'm injured. That's my meditative space. Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna go work out. I'm gonna go play sports. I'm gonna go do all these kinds of things to keep me occupied so that I wouldn't think about like, why don't I want to get out of bed? Mm-hmm. Luckily I didn't fall into other traps and things like that. There's worse things to be addicted to than fitness. Mm-hmm. But it was a real thing. And I used those things and I caught myself using things that ultimately too much training could also go the wrong way or going down those paths. And I just thought that was interesting. Did you have any specific coping mechanisms you used?
Relationship.
Yeah, that was another one.
I was in a 10-year relationship. And so part of never having to identify depression was I had someone there on my bad days. It's like, hey, I'm just going through something. I'm going and being nurtured. I think that to get out of a long-term relationship and start to look at how do I be with this? What is this thing? Oh, it's depression. Great. What is that coming from? Oh, repressed sexual abuse and a number of other things that you previously didn't look at. Awesome. Now, how to be with all of that? That's the Pandora's box that I think most people don't want to open because they don't feel equipped what do you do when you open that box and all of a sudden you're looking at 20 years of repressed emotion? And luckily, I was already in the personal development space. I'd already been a coach. I'd already started doing plant medicine work. I'd already hired my own coaches and attended retreats. I was already deep in that world when the repressed memory came back for me. And so I had way more tools. I was already the kind of person who was sharing very openly. So I had tapped into my emotional experience because oddly enough, in many ways, I feel like I'm known for vulnerability and authenticity and just speaking so openly about my rawest stuff. That's not how I was raised. I was raised the opposite of that. I was raised to keep everything in, don't show emotion. And so to get to that place before having to face off with all the depression and everything was really valuable. And hopefully people, I guess my point is people listening to this who may be in that space of being terrified of opening that door and starting to let those things out. It's okay. It's okay to say that you need help. It's okay to say, I need a therapist. I need a coach. I need whatever to help me move through things that I've been too scared to look at until now. We're not meant to do it alone.
No. Getting the support system is terrifying. You open that box and you're like, wait, I have to deal with all this stuff by myself. Just making the decision to choose to open the box already was huge. And being able to talk to other people about it openly, candidly. I also think being able to talk to other people like that as men, right? I can relate to not the sense of I was told to repress everything, but as men in Latino culture and stuff, my dad was very affectionate, but you see it around you. And growing up in sports, we don't show emotion. Other relationships with girls, like, you're supposed to be tough. You don't show emotions. You don't show this. You don't show that. Like, lock it up. Lock it up. Because I was always sensitive. I've shed a tear a few times. And like, I remember a girl saying, well, you're not tough enough. I'm like, that has nothing to do with my toughness. But I took it and I'm like, okay, let me not show emotions again. Let me hide it even more. Because now I'm out in the world trying to find my partner. And that's bad feedback or bad experiences. And that could have jaded me. Luckily, I have a beautiful wife who we sit and cry on the couch together watching This Is Us and other things. So
I was on This Is Us.
Oh, me too.
I had one.
Did you watch the last episode?
No, I haven't seen it.
You've been away.
I've been away and I don't watch TV much anymore. But when I was an actor in LA, that was one of the shows I got to actually act on, which is amazing.
Which episode? I have to go back and see it.
I think it was the second season. His second season when they're thinking about putting his dad in a home, like a hospice center. I'm the guy that comes in to talk to them about their options. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm
Really
going to go look that up. No,
it's funny that you bring this up. I watched 4 episodes of This Is Us yesterday as part of my very difficult integration process where I'm just like breaking into a million pieces on the floor by myself and crying. Yeah, that was last night. And This Is Us was a part of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, we love that show. We watch it. There's 1 episode left that's over. It's done.
The whole season, the whole series is over.
Done. It's coming to a conclusion.
Got it. Have you watched Parenthood? So if you like This Is Us, go back, maybe Netflix or whatever, if you're looking for the next show with your wife that's really like that same kind of heart and really well acted and well written. Parenthood. One of the best shows that I highly, highly recommend.
The other show we watched that's similar is A Million Little Things.
I haven't seen that.
It started off with a suicide. So it's talking about mental health right there.
Got it.
And just how that has impacted so many people in this friends group.
So I'm curious, how do you utilize art in this process for yourself? Is it something where for you, because I notice that when I'm going through a struggle or I generally don't, I find it hard for me to lean into art, actually. I find my creativity, when I'm going through like a breakup, all of a sudden I'm writing all kinds of poems, all kinds of songs, whatever. But in the general more like malaise of waking up and feeling those tinges of depression or whatever, which to me are just a sign that something's out of alignment. I'm moving down a path and my whole soul is saying, nope, stop. And when I'm in that phase, I've noticed I don't find that like motivation to sit down with my journal and write. I don't find the same motivation to pull out my guitar and play. And yet other people I know other artists, musicians in particular, they can be going through the darkest whatever, and music is the thing that they run to. And I'm just curious for you with your art, where you fall in that.
Great question, because as an artist, I don't operate out of darkness, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes people are like, well, aren't you supposed to be an artist in the corner, like cutting yourself and doing all these? I'm like, what your stereotype of an artist? I don't know who that is or what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But to me, my art is all the things I've always wanted to see, hear, and experience in the world. If I turn on the TV, all I see is fear, pandemics and politics and war and killings and shootings and murders and rapes, right? And I want to see more feel-good content. I want to experience more love. So if I want to see love, I got to put love out there to constantly remind myself. And then I started putting up words that I needed to see and hear. You belong here. I painted that to tell myself I belong here as an artist. Mm-hmm. Many people experienced that work and messaged me and said, thank you, Ruben, for your art. I do belong here. And today I did not take my life. And today I'm going to go out and attack my life. And today I'm going to go live. So it's like my version of it, and what someone takes it in for is their experience. But we get the gist and we get the rift. The first mural I ever painted, it says, who will you be? So I'm having these conversations of like, I'm not worthy. I'm a victim. I'm depressed. I'm fat. I'm whatever. I'm like, what if I saw a wall that asked me who I wanted to be and gave me a multiple choice test and put worthy, responsible, leader, joyful, hopeful, humble, and I can just go select, today I'm not feeling worthy. I'm going to choose to be worthy. And if you choose it enough, it starts becoming that. That's how you integrate it and embody it now. So that was the first mural. And 40,000 people drove by that on Lincoln every single day at any given moment.
The Who Will You Be mural.
The Who Will You Be mural. And then the next mural was anything can happen, anything can be. So it's about living in possibility. And I'm a financial advisor. There's a formula to being an advisor. What does being an artist look like? I've been an artist my whole life, but I wasn't told go become an artist.
So what does it look like for you in terms of you come in, you have a studio space. And so that's pretty much the opposite of me as a full-time nomad that has no lease anywhere, anytime. And so is this like classically conditioned for you to be your creative space? Like when you're here, you got artist hat on? Does it do something to you to be in this space? Or do you have routines that get you into your creativity that like when you get here, you're like, I'm going to do my yoga and I'm going to whatever? Like what is your process of getting into your creativity?
So my process, I kick off the day, I wake up, change my son. I have a 15-month-old now. So I change him, get him ready. I walk to the gym, do the gym, go home, do the breakfast. Then I come to the studio. I used to paint out of my house on the living room wall on my balcony. The minute I committed to having a studio, I was like, oh shit, I'm a professional artist. Like this is what I'm doing. So it gave me that moment of like adulting as an artist, I guess, not to really use the scent, but more as like, this is a real thing. This is what I'm committed to. And whenever you put a risk on something, like a rent and a lease and money, and there's a pain point, it helps you commit even more. There is way more intention. So that's already a thing. I have a committed space. Like that's where I go create. So I come in here and it's not like I'm in here painting every day. There's days where I don't paint. There's weeks that go by that I don't paint. I'm like, wow, I haven't painted in like 3 weeks because I'm working at every other part of the business. That's not always so creative. So I'm trying to keep bringing on teammates to take care of all those things so I can really only focus on creation. But sometimes I'm in here all day and like at 5 p.m., like, oh, it hit me. I'm inspired. But I've got this rule with my wife, like I'm going to be home by 6 so I can hang out with my kid for a couple hours. I put him to bed and have dinner. So I'm like, oh no, I got 45 minutes to try to do something right now.
Yeah.
So some days I battle with that.
Got it.
But a lot of inspiration comes from people and humans. And some of those interactions I take back, whether we had a conversation like, oh, I'm going to make this kind of piece, or I'm going to make this kind of spoken word, or I want to put this message out there, or it's something I have to see out there. And I'm like, this is a word I need to go put on a wall.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think for myself, what I hear in that is interesting because I'm in contemplation of buying a house right now. There's a house that I fell in love with, and I'm battling because every logical part of my mind is like, this is the worst time to buy a house. This is absolutely the worst market. The bubble's about to burst. Interest rates are so high. The economy is stagnant in its growth. Like, it is not the time to buy a house. Mm-hmm. And I think what's driving that ultimately is what you said about healthy pressure of going, okay, for 4 years now, I've haven't had to really make money. And my lifestyle is actually pretty expensive when you add up all the car rentals and Airbnbs and airplane tickets and all the things. But the difference is that's all I haven't had to, right? That's a very much a choice. Buying a house and having a $8,000 mortgage or whatever, that's a different choice. Mm-hmm. There's a different type of pressure there. And I've been sitting with whether or not that's the healthy kind of pressure. Like you said, when you committed to this space, it's like, okay, that's what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. And similarly for me, getting a home and saying, all right, I'm getting a space that will expand me. That's really what that's about. And I've done that before in my life at several instances of going, wow, this is a decision that on paper doesn't make much sense. But in order for it to work, I will need to expand and meet a new level of competition within myself. I will need to evolve to a new version of myself to make this work. And I feel ready for another one of those leaps, but I'm not sure what it is. And maybe you have an idea of what it is. That there are some people that put that pressure on themselves and they don't meet it. They crumble under it. They say, yeah, I'm going to go and get this house or lease this car or take this business risk. And then it winds up being a downhill journey from that point. And I'm curious what you think the difference is, because it sounds like you, what I've observed in your career, you really elevated to meet this.
Mm-hmm. So I would look at that. Let's say there's two types of people. This is how I would look at it. There are people that will take fierce personal responsibility for everything, right? And then there's people that are the total opposite. They will not take responsibility. They're more on the victim side. And then everything in between. Let's just use those two categories. So I think people always want to elevate. What's the intention behind it? Are you overcommitting? Are you overextending yourself? Are you doing it for ego because you want to tell people you just bought the house? Hey, check out my house. This is why I bought it. And for all those issues and all those reasons. And then maybe the economy's tanking, interest rates are high, inflation is killing me. They start using all that as part of why they're going to lose it, or they can't meet those expectations, or they can't rise to the level. Whereas on the other side, we have people that take responsibility for everything, like, pandemic hit. Okay, I can lose everything, sit there with all the people that agree, or I can pivot audible and see what I can do and change and impact the world. I can get this house to expand because I love it for that intention. I really love it. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm going to set anchor and put some roots in. I see myself entertaining people, raising my family. And regardless of what's happening anywhere, I took on the responsibility. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Because it's never the right time either, if you really think about it.
That's with everything, right? Falling in love, having children, buying whatever. It seems like there's never actually the perfect time ever. You said something that I caught where you said, I'm out here looking for my partner, when you were telling the story about being reflected from a woman when she said something to you. How long were you single? How long were you like searching for your partner, so to speak, before you met your wife?
So I bounced around from relationship to relationship.
Serial monogamous. You were in like...
Yeah, there were some good single bouts in between, but when I was in it, I was very loyal, but it's like they all lasted about a year.
Got it.
And I'm like, this isn't going to go to the distance. So it went our separate ways for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then I was probably single 2 years-ish. And one real super solid year in between that before I met my wife now.
Got it.
And she had taken that whole previous year off of dating also. So neither of us were even thinking like, we're going to just jump into something and find it.
Yeah.
But I would say my entire life, I was single looking for Z. And when I found her, like I knew.
That's an artist's answer.
Something clicked.
That's a super artistic, romantic answer.
Yeah. And all my previous relationships, those were apprenticeships.
Yeah. You put in your 10,000 hours.
I put in my 10,000 hours. And we just knew. Her friend put her on Bumble. My friend put me on Bumble.
You met on Bumble.
We met on Bumble.
Interesting. I just did my deep dive podcast. The last episode that just came out is have dating apps destroyed love? So it's interesting that you met on a dating app.
And we are each betting 1,000 because we were each other's first and last dates on Bumble.
Really? Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Very
and I
cool.
matched with a lot of different girls, but the conversations were, are you tall enough? I'm like, I'm tall enough. No, like really, like how tall are you? Like prove it. I'm like, trust me, I'm tall enough. Or like, well, what do you do? How much do you make? I'm like, why does all that matter right now?
Yeah.
Like ask me a question that's going to intrigue me. And then later, after I would like stop talking, I'm like, I'm good. I wouldn't like ghost, but it was no continuance of the conversation. They'd be like, so are you going to ask me out already or what? I'm like, no. I
haven't been on the apps for a while. I actually took last year off of dating. It was my first calendar year that I wouldn't have a relationship. And it wasn't that I wasn't dating. It was just no relationship because I wanted to break this pattern that I'd noticed, which is I feel so strongly for this woman. It's supposed to be a relationship now. And that I said, well, I don't know what's driving that pattern, but I can see it. And therefore, let me just take it off the table and see what happens when now I feel so strongly for someone. Because we go through life and we can feel that for lots of different people, but say, this isn't going to be a relationship and go, well, then what do you do with it? What do I do with this now? If it's not, and learning how to enjoy the moment, enjoy a person without all of the story that gets attached to that.
Because the power of lust versus love, it's really confusing. Am I in lust right now? I'm in love right now. And you're there for a while. I'm like, well,
what's the difference to you?
To me, lust is a powerful attraction of like, I need you, I want you, that strong feeling like you're the one, you're right for me right now. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there is importance of lust. That's part of animal attraction to get us to a point to see where this is going. But when the relationship is only based on that and there's nothing else, no good conversation, no other meat and potatoes, no whatever the case, and it's all about either sex or because you look good on my arm, those reasons.
So lust to you, can it have love in it, or is love what happens when lust fades away?
It could have love in it because sometimes I like to say is, you know what? We were in love for one night. In that moment, we were two humans that connected at the deepest level.
Yeah.
And we're in love in that moment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that. Just because you're in love doesn't mean it has to be 20, 30 years long.
Yeah.
No. So in that moment, and we felt safe and we did what we did and we hung out.
Yeah, I think that's been a big lesson for me. Has been a huge lesson for me is seeing, can I love as deeply in 24 hours, 48 hours, 1 week? Can I let myself love that deeply, knowing that it is not going to be a 6 month, 1 year, 10-year relationship? Just knowing that up front, but going, that doesn't need to stop me from bringing all of my heart and all of myself to this experience, which, by the way, I've learned is also means it's, even if it was 24 hours or 48 hours or 1 week, I find for myself having to somewhat mourn the end of it. It's like a mini breakup after 24 hours. There's a, wow, I'm not going to see this person again. Yeah. Like this person's not, and that because of how deeply I will allow myself to feel, there is the other end of that spectrum as well. Yeah.
And as there should be, that's the natural, there's an up and there's a down and it's okay. But that's also what made it real. And that's how, you went all in on that. You went really deep on it. And it's okay. And mind you, a lot of this could also be very platonic. It doesn't have to be sexual. You can go in for a moment and just totally experience a person and like, okay, this is my this and this is what it was. Okay, now we're moving on.
Yeah. And I find that the more that's a lesson for moving through life. the more of my heart I can move through the world, like the depth of my heart I allow to interface with the world, the more I feel life, the more, and I think that's true for everyone. And that's why so many people shut it down. Mm-hmm. I do think that there is a scary aspect to when this is gone, what does that feel like? And that I have found I've had to remind myself over and over that I can make it out of those downs. Mm-hmm. And there was a period of time where I didn't know that I could make it out. And I think that when I tune in with a lot of people on the planet, that's a very real fear for a lot of people is, can I make it out? Like if I actually let myself truly fall in love with this person, this place, with life itself, can I make it out alive if I lose it or if it goes away?
That's interesting. But the fear of getting hurt is one thing. And actually saying, hey, I'm afraid of this. And how do I have the tools to get through that? And the mourning is very real. The mourning on it is like, I have the tools to get it. I'm just mourning. This is a sad situation. I'm moving through it. I'm okay. But that other side, we're like, am I being abandoned? Am I abandoning? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get crushed? Is this going to impact a future relationship ever? These are all very real questions.
And a lot of it fuels my art in particular. And what I've had to shift for myself is that story that you were talking about of the best art comes from the pain. Like, wow, some of my best poems have come from the deepest heartbreak, right? And having to release this idea that if I truly release the heartbreak, that I'll still be able to make great art. And that's been a journey in and of itself. And realizing, wow, there's a part of me calling in deep, deep sadness because of the idea that it leads to great art. And I think a lot of artists, and I think a lot of people in general actually subscribe to that idea of the tortured artist.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't experience that, you won't be able to create. Right? So maybe you seek it out so that on the other end, at least on the other end, I'm going to create something amazing.
And I feel what's true about that is that the best art comes from the deepest emotion. I think that the best art comes from the highs and the lows. Like people don't necessarily want to listen to a song about you just, it's Netflix and chilling, but there's the songs about the greatest party or the greatest love or the deepest heartbreak or losing someone. Like all of the edges of the human experience make for great art.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And it's a beautiful thing. Like the human experience. That's why we're here. And if we're not willing to live, if we're not willing to experience all the highs, all the lows, if we're not willing to get hurt, I have this poem and the first line I say is, we don't know how to love madly anymore. The risk is said not worth the reward. And that's the constant narrative now. It's like, no, it's not worth it. It's not. And a lot of people settle, right? They just settle and they're like, that's it.
Were you, when you were in a financial advisory role and you were doing really well, but yet you were unhappy, were you painting at the time at all?
Not at the front end of it. I started painting when I started doing the work.
Got it. So painting became the way that you expressed what you were feeling. Mm-hmm. Got it. So it was the outlet.
And I mean, I grew up, I was always painting. I was always doing, you look at all the doodles of my notes in school, weekend classes here and there. So I'm not trained as an artist, but it's always been in me.
That's me with
I
poetry.
avoided for so long.
Mm-hmm. That was me with poetry. Yeah. You go back to my mom's scrapbooks of whatever. I have so many pages and pages of poems when I was in first grade, second grade, third grade, all these really simple poems, but they're there. And, then a break in poetry, right? For, I don't know, a decade plus, just didn't write poetry. Didn't even think of myself as artistic until one day saw a poet performing. And for whatever reason, I think I was 29 years old, 30 years old, and I'd never heard slam poetry before. I don't even know how that's possible now, but I just hadn't. And when I saw a slam poet go at this event, I just went, I can do that. I just knew it. And went out and wrote a poem in 24 hours, read it to my friends. They're like, that was really good. One of my friends says, your next poem should be called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. And I went, sure, why not? And so the second poem I ever wrote was the one that would ultimately go on to go super viral.
That's the one we
and
know.
Yeah, that's the one that most people know. And that's like, it was the second spoken word piece I ever wrote because my friend told me to write a poem called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. And I think that similar to you, it was always there. It was, if I look back at it, it was always there that I loved writing poetry and I just forgotten.
That's beautiful. I don't know, but it's very interesting that someone can tell you something and you listen and you take action and now you're like, right? People kept telling me, you got to do this. You got to do this. I'm going to be fine. Go do this. And here we are.
There were people that were telling you to...
My clients in finance.
Got it.
Yeah.
Telling you to paint. Really?
They're like, that's what you got to be doing.
Interesting. But all of that makes sense in hindsight, right? None of it really makes sense in the moment.
No, not at all.
In fact, it usually makes no sense in the moment. I would say that most of the major decisions that I look at now that people would say that was a good decision or good job taking that risk or that leap. At the time, most people would have said, that's not a very smart decision.
No, if we could always look back and look at our mistakes and change anything, my answer is no, I will never, ever change a thing. And that's because I wouldn't be who I am right now. We're the sum of all our moments. But you still like to have the conversations and look back. Oh, that happened. That happened. That happened.
So you wouldn't change it in your current lifetime, but if given the chance to do it again, you would make a different choice.
If I was able to do it again and know that my outcome would not be affected, which isn't really possible, but if it wouldn't be affected and I end up where I am, I would be this. Yes.
Well, what about if you could just whisper in the ear? Like if you could go back to that
Baby
depressed
Ruben?
version of yourself and you could just whisper something into your ear without necessarily being the one to change the actions or anything, what would you whisper?
I would probably, there's another saying I write, say it whatever it is before it's too late. I would just tell myself, say it, say all those things you're thinking, put it all out there, stop being afraid. Just be you.
That's good advice. You should paint that on a mural. Again.
So my favorite question, this has been an amazing convo, but I've got to really ask, how do you define living a life through love?
I think that every moment is giving us that opportunity to choose love. And to me, living a life through love is by consistently asking myself in as many conscious moments as I can muster, what is the most loving choice? Because I believe that as human beings, we are constantly expanding, but we only expand when we meet our edge in all the different ways. Everything else is within the comfort zone. So as we expand, it gets easier and easier to actually stay in the comfort zone. We have to now start seeking our edges because we've expanded to a point where our comfort zone's great, making good money, like people are impact, getting to do what I want. And none of that is necessarily pushing me anymore, where maybe years ago it was. And when I ask that question of what is the most loving thing that I can choose here, that invites that aspect of expansion. It invites my consciousness to be thinking at its edge and in a very specific way of how can I become even more loving? How can I make that choice to play at the edge of my love, my capacity to love? And if I do that consistently enough in a single day, I know that I will have expanded it. If I can do that in a week or a month or whatever, and I'm consistently making those choices, I know that it will have expanded me in some way, shape, or form. And I believe that's why I'm here, is to expand into deeper levels of love as often as possible.
And believe that it's infinite.
Yeah, there's no end to it, which, in a crying puddle watching This Is Us on the carpet of my friend's apartment, like that's a scary thought. but after a beautiful glass of tequila and conversation, it's just a beautiful thought. So again, the paradox of life.
It's amazing. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Where can people find you?
Lots of online places. Adam.Roa on Instagram, AdamRoa.com. You can Google me, find me on Facebook, and my community is thecreatecommunity.com. It's a space where I support people in going through a process of utilizing creativity for personal growth. And so that's a really exciting thing where we take people every month into creating something, actually just creating something and expressing that. And so thecreatecommunity.com and all the other places. I have 2 podcasts I'll mention here. One is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa, and one is called You're Too Much with Adam and Taylor. That one's a little X-rated, so
no risque.
Be warned. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, man, you're welcome.